The medical tent on Threshold 7 smelled like antiseptic and the peculiar metallic tang that came from treating Sarkathian biochemistry. Connor Hayes had been stationed at this remote border outpost for 6 months, providing medical support for a joint peacekeeping operation that was supposed to be temporary but showed no signs of ending. It was past midnight local time when she stumbled into his tent. Connor looked up from inventory logs to see a Sarkathian woman standing in the entrance, swaying slightly. Even in the dim emergency lighting, he could see she was badly injured. Her armor was scorched and torn, plasma burns visible through the gaps, and she was leaving a trail of bioluminescent blood that glowed faintly in Sarkathian physiology. "Sit," Connor said immediately, moving to guide her to the treatment table. "How long ago were you injured?" 3 hours. Her voice was steady despite obvious pain. "Ambush, border patrol." "You're alone." That was unusual. Sarkathians traveled in units, especially in contested border zones. "Now I am." She said it flatly, and Connor didn't push. Border conflicts created situations where people ended up alone for complicated reasons he'd learned not to question. He helped her onto the table, assessing injuries with practiced efficiency. Plasma burns across her right side, deep lacerations on her arms and shoulders, signs of significant blood loss. Survivable with proper treatment, but she'd been lucky. "I need to remove your armor to treat the burns properly," Connor said. "Is that acceptable?" She hesitated. Not from modesty. Connor had treated enough Sarkathians to know they didn't share human concepts about exposed skin. It was something else. "You're a professional?" she asked. "Field medic, 6 years experience, specialized in multi-species trauma care." He showed her his credentials displayed on his medical tablet. "I've treated hundreds of Sarkathians." "This is purely medical." She studied him with those sharp violet eyes, the signature of Sarkathian genetics, then nodded. "Proceed." Connor worked carefully, releasing the armor clasps and removing the damaged chest plate. The burns underneath were severe, 2nd degree by human standards, though Sarkathian scales provided more protection than human skin. He cleaned the wounds with solutions formulated for Sarkathian biochemistry, applied synthetic skin that would bond with their unique cellular structure, and administered broad-spectrum pain management that worked across species barriers. She barely reacted, showed incredible discipline, the kind that came from extensive training. Most beings would at least flinch during this kind of treatment, but she remained almost perfectly still, only her breathing indicating discomfort. "You've been injured before," Connor observed, noticing the scars across her silver-blue scales. "Old burns, blade marks, impact trauma from various weapons. Extensive combat experience." "Yes," she didn't elaborate. As he worked, Connor noticed details. Her scales had a faint opalescent quality that was unusual. Most Sarkathians he'd treated had more uniform coloring. Her bioluminescent markings were complex, forming patterns he didn't recognize from any of the military units stationed at the outpost. And there was something about her composure, a kind of controlled authority even while injured and vulnerable. Special forces, he guessed. Elite Sarkathian units traveled alone sometimes, operated in ways that regular military didn't. Something like that. She watched him work with intensity that made Connor slightly uncomfortable, not hostile, just evaluating, like she was making calculations he couldn't understand. Outside the tent, Connor heard movement, other Sarkathians passing nearby. He noticed they seemed to sense something and moved away quickly, giving the medical tent unusual distance. "Your people are avoiding this area," Connor said. "Is there something I should know about?" "They're being respectful." She said it like it explained everything. Connor finished treating the major wounds, applied bandaging that would allow her scales to heal properly, and checked her vital signs. "You need rest. Significant blood loss means your system needs recovery time. I can arrange quarters." "No," she sat up smoothly despite her injuries. "I need to leave." "That's medically inadvisable." "It's necessary." She stood, testing her mobility. Connor had done good work. She could move without obvious pain, though he knew she must be hurting. "What's your name?" "Connor Hayes, Field Medic, Earth Medical Corps." She studied him for a long moment, those violet eyes seeming to catalog everything about him. "I will remember your name, Connor Hayes." Then she was gone, disappearing into the night with the kind of stealth that shouldn't be possible for someone who'd just been severely injured. Connor stood in the empty tent, looking at the bioluminescent blood stains on the floor, and wondered what exactly had just happened. The next morning, things started getting strange. Connor was conducting a routine supply check when he noticed increased Sarkathian military presence around the outpost. More guards at checkpoints. Officers with higher rank insignia than normally visited border stations. And everyone seemed to be looking at his medical tent, with expressions ranging from curiosity to something that looked like barely concealed alarm. By afternoon, he was summoned to see his commanding officer. Major Peterson looked stressed, which was unusual for a man who'd spent 15 years managing peacekeeping operations. "Hayes, I need you to answer some questions. Did you treat a Sarkathian woman 3 nights ago?" "Last night." "Yes, ma'am. Injured in border patrol," she said. "Standard field treatment." "Did she identify herself?" "No, ma'am. She didn't volunteer information and I didn't push. Medical protocol." "I know the protocol." Peterson rubbed her temples. "Did she say anything about who she was, where she was from, anything beyond medical matters?" "Nothing. She was pretty close-mouthed." Connor felt growing unease. Should she have identified herself? Peterson didn't answer directly. "I need you to document everything about that treatment, every detail. What she said, how she acted, what you observed. Write it up and send it to me by end of day." "Ma'am, what's going on?" "I don't know yet, but apparently it's important enough that I've got Sarkathian High Command asking questions." She looked at him seriously. "And Hayes, if she comes back, you report it immediately. Understood?" "Yes, ma'am." Connor left the meeting feeling like he'd somehow stepped into something way above his clearance level. The feeling intensified over the next 2 days when he was suddenly assigned a security detail. 2 Sarkathian guards who followed him everywhere, claiming it was enhanced protection protocols. Connor had enough military experience to recognize this wasn't protection, it was surveillance. On the 4th day, a Sarkathian officer approached him directly. The officer was clearly high-ranking. His scales bore complex markings, his armor was elaborate, and everyone else gave him immediate deference. "Connor Hayes," the officer said. "I am Vel'karith, commander of the 3rd Border Legion. I have questions about your patient." They went somewhere private, a secured room that Connor had never accessed before. Vel'karith asked detailed questions. The exact nature of her injuries, Connor's treatment methods, whether she'd discussed anything beyond medical matters, how long she'd stayed, what she'd said when leaving. Connor answered honestly. He was a medic. He'd treated her wounds. She'd said almost nothing. She'd left before he could arrange follow-up care. Vel'karith looked at him with an expression Connor couldn't quite read, something between concern and pity. "You don't know who she was." "Should I?" "Yes. And now your ignorance may be the only thing protecting you." Vel'karith stood to leave. "Be careful, Connor Hayes. You've stepped into currents you don't understand. Through no fault of your own, but that won't matter to everyone." He left before Connor could ask what that meant. That evening, she returned. Connor was closing down the medical tent for the night when she walked in like she owned the place. She'd healed remarkably fast. The burns that should have taken weeks were already showing significant regeneration. The lacerations had sealed completely. But it wasn't her healing that made Connor freeze. It was how the guards who'd been following him immediately bowed their heads and retreated to give her privacy. Bowed. To someone he'd treated like any other injured soldier. She wasn't wearing armor now. Formal robes that Connor's cultural training identified as extremely high status. The kind of clothing worn by planetary governors or military leadership at the highest levels. Your treatment was excellent, she said. I owe you a debt. Connor found his voice. Who are you? She smiled slightly, a predator's smile that was somehow not threatening. My name is Sythara Vel'karith. I am the Supreme Commander of the Sarkathian Defense Forces. I command 17 fleet groups and speak with the Empress's own authority. Connor's brain stalled. The Supreme Commander, one of the most powerful military leaders in 7 systems, had been the injured soldier he'd treated with casual professionalism in his field. Sythara gestured for Connor to sit. For a long moment she seemed to be choosing her words carefully, unusual for someone with her authority. Among my people, she said finally, allowing someone to tend to your wounds in the manner you did, removing armor, touching bare scales, seeing you vulnerable, is an intimate act. We call it accepting the Kel'vath. It creates a bond of trust that is normally reserved for battle companions, closest family, or bonded partners. Connor felt his stomach drop. I was providing medical care. That shouldn't create political complications. Medical care from someone who saw me as an equal rather than a rank, who touched me without fear or calculated respect, who showed competence and compassion without seeking advantage. She looked at him directly. The Kel'vath isn't about intention, Connor Hayes. It's about truth revealed in vulnerable moments. You revealed your character by treating me with simple human decency when I was at my weakest. By Sarkathian law, that matters more than any political consideration. But I didn't know, Connor protested. I thought you were just. That's what makes it legitimate. Sythara sat across from him. If you'd known who I was, your actions would have been calculated, political, strategic. You would have treated me as the Supreme Commander rather than as someone who needed help. The Kel'vath requires truth, action without performance. Connor tried to process this. What does this bond mean, practically? It means I have acknowledged you as someone I trust in moments of vulnerability. It means by my culture's laws, you have rights of access and counsel that even most of my senior staff don't possess. It means, she paused, it means you've been granted an intimacy with me that most Sarkathians would never achieve in their entire lives. That's insane. That's tradition. She almost smiled, and it's causing significant political problems. Over the next hour, Sythara explained. High-ranking Sarkathians were furious. A human civilian had been granted intimacy with their supreme commander that they would kill for. Political factions saw it as either weakness, that she'd allowed this, or dangerous foreign influence, that he might leverage it. Her enemies saw Connor as a tool to use against her. Her allies saw him as a potential liability. Why not just deny it? Connor asked. Say it was purely medical, cultural misunderstanding, whatever makes the politics easier. Because it's true. Sythara said it with absolute conviction. And I won't lie about something this fundamental to make others comfortable. You helped me when I was vulnerable. That creates a bond my culture recognizes as sacred. Denying it would be denying the values I claim to uphold. The complications mounted over the following days. Connor was pulled into meetings with Earth Military Command, trying to understand his relationship with the Supreme Commander. Sarkathian officials questioned him repeatedly, searching for signs of manipulation or calculation. Political analysts debated whether this was a brilliant strategic move or catastrophic cultural breach. Through it all, Sythara was clear. The Kel'vath was legitimate. She wouldn't deny it. And she wouldn't let Connor be harmed because of something neither of them had planned. You're protecting me, Connor realized during one of their conversations. From your own people. From those who would use you as a weapon against me, yes. She didn't deny it. The Kel'vath creates obligations in both directions. I trusted you with my vulnerability. Now I'm obligated to ensure that trust doesn't destroy you. This is way above my pay grade. Most significant things are, she studied him, you have a choice, Connor Hayes. You can request transfer, return to normal field work, leave this situation behind. The Kel'vath would remain acknowledged but become dormant if we don't interact. Or you can accept what's happened and learn to navigate the complications. What happens if I leave? You're safe either way. I've made that clear to everyone who matters. She paused. But if you leave, I lose the one person at this level who sees me as someone who needed help rather than as a position to leverage. That's rare enough to be valuable. Before Connor could respond, alarms sounded across the outpost. Security breach, armed infiltrators, the kind of crisis that shouldn't be possible at a fortified military installation. Sythara's expression went cold and tactical. Stay here, guards will. I'm a medic, Connor interrupted. If there are casualties, there will be. She was already moving, but you're not trained for combat situations. I'm trained for exactly this, field medicine under fire. He grabbed his emergency kit. And apparently I'm bound to you by some sacred trust bond. So where you go, I'm coming. For the first time, Sythara looked at him with something like respect mixed with concern. You're either very brave or very stupid. I'm a field medic. Goes with the job. Connor followed her out of the room, into chaos that would test everything he thought he understood about courage, trust, and the bonds created in moments of vulnerability. The diplomatic function was supposed to be safe, a formal gathering between Earth and Sarkathian military leadership to discuss border security protocols. High-level security, multiple checkpoints, every attendee vetted. The attackers proved that determined people can infiltrate anything. Connor was present because Sythara had insisted. He was her recognized Kel'vath companion, which gave him formal status to attend despite Earth Command's concerns about a field medic at high-level diplomatic events. He stood near the refreshment area, profoundly uncomfortable in formal dress uniform, when the first explosion happened. Later, investigators would determine it had been coordinated perfectly. Infiltrators posing as service staff, weapons smuggled in components past security and assembled on site, timed to create maximum chaos when everyone was relaxed and unprepared. Connor's training kicked in immediately. While others scattered away from the danger, he moved toward it, toward the screams, toward casualties who would need immediate care. He saw Sythara 20 feet away, already in combat mode. She'd somehow acquired a blade, probably from a guard, and was fighting 3 attackers with terrifying efficiency. The Supreme Commander hadn't achieved her position through politics alone. Then he saw her get hit. Plasma fire from a 4th attacker caught her across the shoulder, spinning her halfway around. She didn't go down, but the impact staggered her. Connor made a decision that was tactically questionable and probably medically inadvisable. He ran toward the most dangerous person in the room while she was fighting for her life. Sythara's guards tried to intercept him. They couldn't immediately tell if he was threat or ally in the chaos. But Sythara saw him coming, understood, and somehow communicated something to her guards because they suddenly formed a protective perimeter instead of blocking his approach. Connor reached her while fighting continued around them. The plasma burn across her shoulder was severe. She was losing blood, her right arm mobility compromised. "This is stupid," she said, still facing threats. "Extremely stupid," Connor agreed, already pulling emergency medical supplies from the kit he'd grabbed. "But we established I'm stupid days ago. Hold still." He worked fast, cleaning the burn, applying coagulant to stop the bleeding, sealing it with emergency synthetic skin that would hold until proper treatment. All while guards fought around them, while plasma fire occasionally passed too close, while every professional instinct Connor had screamed that this was insane. But it worked. The wound sealed. Sythara's combat efficiency immediately improved with full mobility restored. She finished the fight with brutal precision that reminded Connor exactly why she was Supreme Commander. The aftermath was chaos. 12 attackers dead or captured, 3 Sarkathians killed, 8 more wounded including 2 humans. Connor spent the next 6 hours treating casualties while security teams swept for additional threats. When things finally stabilized, Sythara found him in the converted medical area. She'd refused treatment until all other casualties were addressed, which Connor had argued about and lost because apparently Supreme Commanders outranked medical sense. That was tactically inadvisable, she said. That was my professional assessment too, Connor said, finally treating her shoulder properly now that he had time and proper supplies. Running toward combat to provide field medicine while people are actively trying to kill everyone. Not recommended in any training manual. Yet you did it anyway. You were injured, I'm a medic. The math was simple. He checked her wounds healing. Sarkathian biology was already regenerating impressively. Though I'd prefer if future medical emergencies didn't involve quite so much plasma fire. Sythara was quiet for a moment. You're aware that every Sarkathian in that room watched you run toward danger to help me. I'm aware I'm probably going to be written up for violation of combat protocols. You're going to be something else entirely. She touched his hand, brief but meaningful. You've now twice proven the Kel'vath bond legitimate, treated my wounds with skill and without fear when I was vulnerable, shown courage in crisis without expectation of reward. My people respect that, even when it's tactically questionable. Over the following days, the assassination attempt was traced to a conservative military faction that opposed Sythara's progressive reforms. They'd seen her weakness, the unprecedented bond with a human, as opportunity to strike. They'd miscalculated. Connor's actions during the attack had demonstrated exactly the kind of courage Sarkathian culture valued. Not military prowess, but commitment to principles under pressure. Sythara called a formal assembly of her command staff. Connor was required to attend, standing beside her in a position that made Earth Command extremely nervous. Connor Hayes has proven the Kel'vath bond legitimate by any measure my culture recognizes, Sythara announced formally. He has twice treated my wounds with skill and without fear. He has shown courage in crisis without calculation of personal benefit. He has demonstrated that the most valuable bonds form from competence and compassion rather than political strategy. She looked around the assembled officers, some supportive, some clearly opposed, all listening carefully. I am formally requesting that Connor Hayes be assigned as my personal medical officer and recognized Kel'vath companion. This places him in my inner circle with access and council rights that Sarkathian law protects. The request sent political shockwaves through both human and Sarkathian command structures. After extensive debate, consultations with cultural experts, and recognition that denying it would create worse diplomatic problems than accepting it, the assignment was approved. Connor was given a choice. Accept the position and be drawn into conflicts and politics far beyond his original mission, or refuse and return to field work, though the Kel'vath bond would remain acknowledged. They discussed it privately in Sythara's quarters aboard the command ship where she'd relocated after the assassination attempt. This will complicate your life immensely, she said honestly. You'll be scrutinized constantly, tested by those who doubt you, possibly targeted by my enemies. The simple act of treating my wounds has become something neither of us intended. But it means something in your culture, Connor said. The Kel'vath. It's not just politics. It's about trust revealed in vulnerable moments. Yes, Connor thought about the injured woman who'd stumbled into his tent, about treating her with the same professional care he'd give anyone, about how that simple act had revealed something neither of them expected. I became a medic because I believe in helping people regardless of who they are, he said finally. If accepting this position means I can continue doing that while honoring a bond your culture takes seriously, then I accept. He paused, though I reserve the right to tell you when military politics are getting ridiculous. Sythara smiled, genuine warmth breaking through command authority. That perspective is exactly why the Kel'vath matters. You see the person before the position. That's rare at my level. That's valuable. Months passed. Connor adapted to his new role, providing medical care for the Supreme Commander and her closest staff, learning to navigate Sarkathian military culture, maintaining his core identity as someone who just wanted to help people while operating in circles of power he'd never imagined accessing. He and Sythara developed genuine friendship built on the foundation of that first night when he treated her without knowing or caring about her rank. She valued his perspective precisely because it came from outside the political calculations that dominated her life. He valued her trust because it was earned through simple competence rather than status. One evening, after a particularly exhausting diplomatic session, they walked through the command ship's observation deck. Stars stretched in every direction, and for a moment the politics and complications felt distant. "My staff still doesn't fully understand why I maintain this bond," Sythara said. "They see the complications it creates and wonder why I don't take the politically convenient path of minimizing it." "What do you tell them?" "The truth, that you saw me bleeding and offered help without calculation. That your competence and compassion revealed character in a moment when pretense was impossible. That sometimes the most important bonds form when we're too vulnerable to perform, and someone chooses decency anyway." Connor thought about that, about how a simple act of medical care, treating someone's wounds without fear or expectation, had become something far more significant, not because he'd intended it, but because genuine care in vulnerable moments created connections that transcended politics and status. "I still think about that first night sometimes," he admitted. "When you walked into my tent and I had no idea who you were, just saw someone who needed help. That ignorance was the most honest thing about you." Sythara smiled. "And the moment you learned who I was, you didn't change how you treated me. Still saw the person who needed help. That consistency is what the Kel'vath recognizes as true character." They stood together watching stars, an unlikely pair bound by truth revealed in vulnerability, navigating conflicts far beyond what either had expected, proving that the most powerful connections often form not through grand gestures, but through simple acts of competence and care when someone needs help and someone else chooses to provide it. "Thank you," Sythara said quietly, "for running toward danger to help me, for treating me like a person rather than a position, for honoring a bond neither of us planned but both of us have chosen to maintain." "Thank you," Connor responded, "for trusting me enough to be vulnerable, for valuing the simple act of medical care as something meaningful, for proving that sometimes the